Rangers Podcast. With Andrew Chelney. And Nick Zararis.
Rangers fans, welcome to the best Rangers podcast in town. I am Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis, and we are Liberty Blue. We scream about the Rangers so that you can save your voice. That's how deeply we care about you, and we appreciate that you've joined us for the ride. This is episode 36, live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Coming at you live on this Tuesday night. We'll be back at our normal Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern showtime next week. Full video will be up on our YouTube page, Liberty Blue Podcast, and the audio version will be available wherever you get your podcasts. Search Liberty Blue on your favorite podcast platform, and it should be there. Give the show that shiny and illustrious 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps the show way more than you think it does. At Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew, and that is Nick Zararis, Nick Zararis. Those are our personal handles to follow as well. Nick, the Rangers finally lost the game in regulation in over a calendar month, and the hot takes on Twitter last night were firing on all cylinders.
Okay, so being that my AirPods disconnected and I missed most of the monologue, I'm going to assume you just asked me how I feel about the Rangers finally losing a game in regulation.
There you go.
I'm a decent
That's right.
amateur lip reader, and as I'm going on here, I will try and get my AirPods reconnected so we can have an actual conversation here as opposed to have a lip reading contest. But it was going to happen eventually. I mean, it's unrealistic to expect them to keep rolling on and on and on. They've played pretty well in the last month. Of course, as we've pointed out, there are things you'd like to clean up. You'd like to get off to better starts. You need Igor to kind of get into a bit more of a rhythm. You'd like the power play to be a little bit better. But macro, big picture, I don't think losing in overtime to Calgary and then getting goalied Monday night against Winnipeg is any searing indictment of a decent team. I think it was bound to happen eventually. The Rangers have, I don't want to say gotten lucky, because they've played a little bit better than that. They are not riding the goaltender and power play juice like they did last year. They've won pretty consistently in the last month and a half or so by playing really good team defense, not conceding a ton of offense, and by outscoring the other team. Sure, they've played, you'd like them to be a little bit better defensively, but for all intents and purposes, they're playing as one of the best defensive units in the entire league. I mean, they're top 5 in chances against per 60 most nights. They're top 10, I want to say, and expected goals against per 60. So everything you want from a good defensive team is there. You just need the goalie to be a little bit better, first of all, and you would like a little more offense at 5-on-5. But for the most part, complain about. I mean, hockey teams lose games. That's just part of how this goes.
The thing about last night, Rangers fans are so spoiled now. It's really hilarious to see the discourse on social media yesterday. The Rangers finally lose one game in regulation. They didn't play well. Shesterkin didn't have the greatest of games. There was a couple of goals that he should have had, sure. And Connor Hellebuyck played extremely well. I mean, he stood on his head. He had a vintage Lundqvist performance against the Rangers. The Winnipeg Jets did not help hit their goaltender out at all. Not for one single second did the Winnipeg Jets actually help their goaltender. He stood on his head and essentially just stole the game for the Jets. So he played very well, and hats off to him. Listen, like, these things are going to happen. And I tweeted this out on our Twitter page at Liberty Blue Pod last night, is that I personally, I don't know about you, Nick, and I don't know about the people watching, but I would rather Shesterkin struggle a little bit now as opposed to during the playoffs. Like, if your starting goaltender is going to have this stretch of games where he's not putting up ridiculous Hall of Fame level numbers, I'd rather it be in February than deep in the second round of the playoffs or in the conference final or something like that. I'd much rather it happen now, because it happens to every goalie in the history of the world. Goalies can't just maintain a .980 save percentage for every game forever. there's going to be times where the goalie looks human. And in this case, Igor Shesterkin, over the course of his last few starts, hasn't looked incredible. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that, hey, he's struggling a little bit and he is going to figure it out and get his game back. But again, I would much rather it happen on February, like in the middle of February, than the middle of May or June.
Oh no, this is absolutely true. Today I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw a tweet about Shesterkin's performance and I was like, "Oh," and then I realized it was from February of 2022 because this kind of thing happened exactly at the same period of time last year where he was a slightly above league average goalie as opposed to the best goalie in the league. And for 2 weeks that kind of, it's going to happen, as you just said. That's part of how this goes. It's in cycles. Maybe you get a little bit more shooting luck. They've scored at least 4 or 5 goals most of the last couple of games. That's a good indicator, but that's a good indicator if you're getting a little bit lucky. Typically, you're going to be more closer to 3 most nights. That's just typically what a team scores on any given night. But for the most part, I think everybody's kind of in agreement now that this is more or less the group. Maybe you add one more guy. It's about staying as healthy as humanly possible. It's about finding what line combinations will make the coach happy and all of us happy, and getting to the playoffs in one piece, because you got a really good shot here now. I was talking about this today. I was talking about this yesterday. The Rangers are one of the 6, 7 best teams in the entire league. Granted, 6 of the 7 best teams in the entire league are in the East, so the path to that final isn't as easy as it might have been, say, a year or two ago. But for all intents and purposes, this group is ready. There's stuff to fix. I know you especially would love to see them come out of the gate faster. They've started slow a handful of times this year, especially in the last couple of weeks. They got behind early on Friday, behind early on Saturday, behind early yesterday. And it's really hard to play from behind from a deficit, especially for an extended period of time, because that's more grueling. There's more work to do when you're chasing the game. You have to exert more energy, whereas when you have a lead, you can typically be a little more conservative in your approach. But because we haven't talked on the show since the Rangers got Tyler Mott, we can take 2 minutes here and we can talk about that really briefly. Tidy piece of business. And when we do picking nits in a little bit, we can talk about why we really probably should have just had him the entire season, but we'll get there when we get there.
That'd be great.
I'm happy that this is what we asked for. Go out and get one more forward, and find the right group, find the right mix for your group. Now, it's a matter of figuring out where you want to do with him and what that does to everybody else in your lineup. I still don't think I think they probably have to replace Leschyshyn, even if it's in-house, even if it's Gaudreau, even if it's somebody from the AHL, if it's William Cooley, if it's Gustav Rydal, sure. But I don't think you can run Leschyshyn as the 4C for a real playoff run. Other than that, I don't really have a ton to complain about. They were going to lose eventually, and they lost to decent teams. Winnipeg is going to be one of the top 2 or 3 seeds in the West, and Calgary is a bubble playoff team, but they have a decent amount of talent where you can understand why they got out to a quick start and the Rangers were struggling on Saturday.
Well, Vince Marcagliano is kind of hinting very obviously that they're just going to make another move to replace Leschyshyn, because I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, somebody was like, why is he still out there? And basically Vince was like, well, because I haven't made the trade yet. Like there's it's essentially it's an open secret that the Rangers are going to upgrade from Jake Leschyshyn. It's a matter of who and when that's going to be, because Leschyshyn has been doing his cardio out there for the last few weeks now for the Rangers, and I feel like the Rangers in recent history love their young guy that does nothing but get cardio. I don't know what it is about this team. Sammy Blais, who, by the way, has been playing very well in St. Louis. I don't know what. Maybe I don't know what's going on between that, but we'll just leave that as an aside. Like Sammy Blais did a whole lot of nothing in New York, cardio guy. Before that, it was Brett Howden. Massive love to get cardio kind of player. And the Rangers, like, for some reason, love to have one of those players on the roster and playing every night, despite there being better options available. Like Johnny Brodzinski, say what you will about him, he's a much better 4th line center than Jake Leschyshyn. He's actually doing things out there positively for the Rangers, I might add. Like this is somebody that could play at the NHL level, but he's not here, and Jake Leschyshyn is playing instead of him for reasons. So, like this is nitpicking, but the thing about it is, and a certain subsection of Twitter will have you believe that complaining about the 4th line is being a naysayer and that it's all good and it's all peaches and roses and we're yelling into thin air. But the thing about that viewpoint, which I vehemently disagree with, is that if you look at who has won the Stanley Cup in the past 5, 10, 15 years, they have all had a solid fourth line that you can put out there and they can get you that grimy goal. They can dominate possession of the puck for a shift. They can do the things that their other lines can do. And that's what makes a dangerous team that much more dangerous. When your bottom three forwards, even they can do something positive for your team, that is a scary lineup. And the why we're out here, complaining about Leschyshyn getting ice time is because he does nothing, right? Like, that's the thing. When the Rangers get a better fourth line center and that's the roster, I totally agree. Just get to the playoffs healthy. No one do anything silly. No silly season upon us. Just get there, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so a couple of things to piggyback off of that. Number one, you gotta have a fourth line that's competent, as you just said, and not just like guys with a pulse. You want them to be able to maintain offensive zone time, chip in a goal, maybe every other game, every like 3 to 4 games in the playoffs, something along those marks. I mean, a good team is shooting for 10 goals per guy on your fourth line. On a good team, that's typically what you have. You had the Lightning the last couple of years have Ross Colton really do well in that role and ended up getting himself promoted, as Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman, Yanni Gourde all promoted themselves out by getting too much money. But that's what your fourth line should be, is functional guys capable of doing more than just the bare minimum. And to add on to that, when you get to the playoffs, your margin for error becomes a lot smaller because you have a lot smaller sample to work with. You get 4 chances. If you lose 4 in a row, that's it. You're done. You got to win 4 out of 7. And the margins are that small when you're playing. Say you're playing the Devils in the first round and you're out there against Bastian, McLeod, and Miles Wood, or whoever the other wing is. That's a competent fourth line that occasionally can drive the net, can throw some hits, can get pucks on the net. Miles Wood can careen into the goalie at full speed because he's 28 years old and still has never learned how to stop as a skater. But
he's the Louis Mendoza of the New Jersey Devils.
He is. That's a very apt comparison. But when you're in the playoffs, you need the depth to be a real contributor to your team. That's why you have to focus on the margins now. We understand that there's still a good 2.5 months of the regular season left. But for all intents and purposes, we know the Rangers are a playoff team. We know the Rangers' goal is to win the Stanley Cup. You can't do that if you don't get everything in order by the time the trade deadline comes. They need one more guy, whether it's in-house or whether it's Nick Bjugstad, whether it's somebody of Nick Bjugstad's ilk. I don't know who else is really out there of that tier, of that fourth line guy. I don't care about faceoffs. For the love of God, do not pitch me somebody. Do not pitch me like all the years the insiders were like, well, everybody should be in on Luke Glendening. He's a 53% faceoff guy. I don't care. Faceoffs are like the 9th thing. If it's down the list, like when they were talking about Trocheck last year, that was like 5th or 6th. I was like, okay, I can live with that. That's a bonus. If your main selling point on a fourth line center is they can win faceoffs, I'm good. They've already got a faceoff specialist, and I'm putting that in quotes because Gaudreau doesn't really win a lot of faceoffs anymore, and he plays more wing than center. They've got Zibanejad, who's about 50%, and they've got Trocheck, who's slightly over 50%. I don't need a fourth-line specialist center who only wins faceoffs. Please get a fourth-line center like Nick Bjugstad who can delete things defensively. Or like, I'm trying to think, who was the center on Arizona last year that Washington traded for? Not the Swedish dude, the one we wanted over the summer. Hang on, this is what Google is for. This is what Google is for.
Oh man,
amazing radio.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. I can't remember for sure, but real quick, like about the Tyler Mott trade before, but why you looked that up is, and I posted this on my Twitter when the trade happened as well. Is that the only thing that I could complain about for the Rangers side of things about this is that I would have liked to keep Gauthier as a 13th forward in case somebody goes down for injury reasons. Because if VC or if somebody goes down, Julien Gauthier is there and can fill the void as needed when needed come playoff time. Because with injuries, you just never know when you're going to need that 13th forward. So I would have liked to have him. You can definitely have worse options as your 13th forward. So I guess like that's really my only nitpick about the whole situation. The 7th round pick that could turn into a 6th, I could not care less about that pick. Tyler Ahmad is a great fit. He wasn't having the greatest of years in Ottawa, but he had a massive couple of weeks as a Ranger last season. He played great in the playoffs, and now he's back. So the trade in and of itself was great for the Rangers, and I gave the Rangers an A of a grade, and I gave the Senators a C because Julian Gauthier is a guy, and he and someone posted this on Twitter yesterday. Like somebody posted, as a Sens fan, posted a highlight of him driving to the net, and they were gushing about it. He's like, "Oh, look at Gauthier making a great play, and he drove to the net and all this." But like then he takes an easy shot, and the goalie makes an easy save, and that's the whole play. Like that's what Gauthier is there for. Like he will never score, but he looks good sometimes. And as a 13th forward, he would have been fine, but they got a guy, sure.
Gautier's better. Gautier's a quality NHL fourth liner. If he is a fourth liner on your team, you're probably a pretty good team, in all honesty. If he's playing in your top 9, you're probably not as good of a team. But Julian Gauthier is a quality NHL fourth liner. The player I was thinking of was Johan Larsson. It took me. I knew he was Swedish, but yeah, defense first, and actually defense first. Not like throws hits, block shots. Like the other team doesn't take chances, doesn't create offense when he's on the ice because there is no room. That's the kind of defense
The thing about hits and all these things is that you only do them when you don't have the puck. And when you don't have the puck, you have to hit people and you have to stick check people and you have to do all these things. When you have the puck, no one's throwing hits, because if you do, that's an interference call. So hits,
You know what I would like, and I was thinking about this today. I would love more detailed statistics. Like for example, number 1, this is something I've been advocating for forever. We need face-offs one clean and face-offs one contested, divided out statistically. And you were just talking about hits. We need hits and hits that generate turnover. Not just turnover. You need a clear way to measure these things more descriptively. And we know it's possible. It's just, it requires another level of attention. You need a lot of the analytics are rooted in to be able to tell that. I even log somebody to do that. There's a statistics in face-offs one, hits that lead to turnover, hits that lead to contested possession. More detailed statistics, I feel like if they were available, would do a better job of describing exactly what you're saying, because there are 2 types of hits. There are multiple types of face-offs. If you're throwing a hit and the puck's already gone, it's great you got credit for a hit, but you didn't actually create possession or force the other team to lose possession. The puck's already gone. This is something I've advocated for forever, and I know my friends in the stat tracking community would love, because that's all we're really doing here. And it's one of the things I really wish people who are so anti-statistics would understand. We're trying to find ways to explain things that aren't currently able to be explained by the conventional statistics or just by watching the game. I cannot keep a tally of every single player on the ice for both teams and keep track of every single scoring chance at where it's from, hits, face-offs, all of these things at the same time and still watch the game. There's simply too much going on to keep track of things anecdotally in the way so many people say they would. Detailed statistics. NHL, I beg of you, please. We have the technology.
Well, the thing about this, right, is that once we dive into that, and I would love for the NHL to start having these statistics readily available. The thing about that is that you have that subsection of the hockey community that's like, oh, this is analytics. This is ruining the sport. This is
like Carlo Colavacchio, like 2 weeks ago, being like, this is why people aren't watching hockey.
Yeah. There's too much math involved or something.
They're doing linear equations on Sportnet.
Right. Carlo Colavacchio. There's too much trigonometry happening for people to enjoy hockey. That's right. Yeah, that's it. But it would paint a better, just like analytics do now. It's not the end all be all. Just because somebody has a high hits to turnover ratio doesn't mean that he's that should be your only stat that you're seeing, and you don't have to focus on anything else. You don't have to watch that player play. It's the same thing with analytics. It's like this is another piece of the puzzle to help you better understand how a player plays, because when you're watching a game, there's only so many things you can watch at a certain point, unless you are pausing and rewinding and focusing on one player in particular or one period in particular, or doing just very in-depth analysis on somebody during a game. You can't physically possibly see what all five players are doing all of the time, and all of their zone entries and their exits and their all these things. Like, that's, you physically cannot do that no matter how many times you watch the game. So that's why analytics are there, to give you that sort of like, hey, we have this information, here you go, so you don't have to rewatch and watch the same game 86 times for you to get this information. Here it is, we have it. That's what analytics are. So this, like, the NHL getting more into that would be great. It would just paint a better picture. The problem is the NHL has no interest, zero interest in expanding their stats right now. They barely, like, they don't even, I mean, a lot of the NHL like is still far behind just basic analytics still. So the NHL is far away from adding detailed stats to these things, but hey, I would love to see it.
Hey man, if you're gonna lead the league in hits, I want to know how many of the hits are actually like useful, or if you're just out there stat padding.
Sure.
Like, everybody likes to make fun of on NBA Twitter, like the season's Russ average triple doubles on mediocre teams that barely made the playoffs. I want to know, is Matt Martin stat padding leading the league in hits 6 years in a row? Is he just throwing hits because he's on the ice, or is he actually getting turnovers and forcing turnovers? Speaking of Matt Martin, the Penguins might be dead.
They are.
The Penguins are on the ropes.
Well, the thing about the Penguins is that, like, Ron Hextall refuses to believe that they're bad, which is hilarious. I feel for Penguins fans, like, as somebody that, like, we over the years have had Rangers and Penguins series. We've seen the Penguins be successful. This has been a rivalry for such a long time. Like, the Penguins are such a storied franchise at this point, and you would think that with Crosby and Malkin and Letang tied up for not an egregious amount of money, that the Penguins would fix this team. And yet they continue to do nothing because Ron Hextall believes that this is a good team, even though they're not. They're third. I saw somebody tweet earlier today that the Penguins' third line basically has done nothing offensively for 2 months.
Yeah. The
They've
Jeff
done
Carter
nothing.
line is not Jeff. I think it's Carter with Kapanen, and I want to say Jason Zucker. It has not worked for them.
It's not good. No, and it's the Penguins are just they're stuck in the mud. They're trying to get out, and it's not working. But the general manager, who is right behind them, instead of trying to push the car out of the mud, he is just standing there taking pictures. Like, I don't know what his game plan is, because Crosby, Malkin, Letang, like, all these guys are, they're not 27, 28 years old anymore. Like, if you're not going to go for it now, when is the right move? If not now, then when for this core? Why did you re-sign these guys if you don't want to make the trades that will make the Penguins a dangerous playoff team? What was the point of all of this? Did you just expect Crosby to score 300 points and single-handedly carry the Penguins to another cup run? Like, no, dude, you can't. I don't, like, Ron Hextall, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah. Real quick, I saw the Bruins on Saturday. That team, I am so hesitant to say the best regular season team is going to win the Stanley Cup. It very rarely happens. The last team to do it was the Blackhawks in the shortened season in 2013. I find it really hard to see how any team in the NHL is going to beat the Bruins 4 out of 7 times. They dog walked the Islanders. It was 4-0 after the first period, and the Islanders didn't have a shot in that game. Granted, the Islanders on a back-to-back, whatever. That Bruins team is ridiculous. That Bruins team that's the best 1 through 9 in the league. And that's the thing I keep telling all my Ranger fan friends is, like, yeah, the Rangers have a really good forward group. The Bruins forward group is better. The Bruins forward group is significantly better overall.
Well, that's the thing about the Islanders is if you go into a game like that, the Bruins are objectively right now the best team in the NHL. If you go and battle the best team in the NHL and they lap circles around you, it's not even that it was a close game. When the Rangers lost to the Bruins 3-1, like it was a close game for all intents and
Yeah.
purposes. Like that was a close game. It could have the Rangers, like if they had a couple more bounces, they could have, like it was a close game for the most part. When the Islanders lose like that, and you look at their playoff position, and you look at how many games they've played more than everybody else that's also fighting for these final playoff spots, you take a look at them and you go, what are they doing? What is their game plan? Because they traded for Bo Horvat, which is great. Listen, like Bo Horvat is a great player, and he makes the Islanders better. The problem with the Bo Horvat trade is that it fixes absolutely nothing for the Islanders. There's the same problems that they had, they still have. Their bottom six is still an atrocity that can't score goals. Their power play is bad, and I guess it's a little bit better now that because Bo Horvat's there. But overall, like their defense isn't all that good either. Bo Horvat is fine. He's looked good in
And
Islanders uniform, sure.
Barzal's probably
He's
out
out
the rest of the year.
He's out for a while. So what is the plan? What is the game plan for Lou Lamoriello? Because the Islanders look bad. They got destroyed against a really good team. Yeah, they beat Pittsburgh, but like the Pittsburgh Penguins look just as bad. So congrats. I like the game plan right now is a big question mark for those two teams. For the Rangers, it's much more clear. Like, hey, they're making the playoffs. The Rangers just added Tyler Mott. They added Tarasenko. They're probably going to add Nick Bukestad or somebody else to fill up that fourth line. And that's that. The book has been written. For the Islanders and the Penguins, we have no understanding of what language this text is written in.
You could add Washington to that mix. I would go as far as to say I see a world in which Buffalo or Detroit probably gets in before Pittsburgh or the Islanders right now, because the Islanders without Barzal don't have the scoring. They didn't have the scoring with Barzal, let alone without him. Pittsburgh doesn't. Yari coming back is good in theory, but in practice,
until he gets injured in 2 weeks again.
Yes, exactly. He hasn't been able to stay healthy this year. That defense, especially, has been Pittsburgh's real issue this year. Brian Dumoulin, it's time to go be a family man. The cup runs were great, but that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It's over for Brian Dumoulin. Jeff Petrie has not been that good. He's been dinged up most of this season. Washington is old. Washington is very old. I mean,
they're pretty dinged up as well. I mean, Tom Wilson has been in and out of the lineup. He's been battling injuries as well. Nick Backstrom, we don't really know what to expect out of him. Like, he had that really difficult surgery that he went through, and what is he going to do come playoff time? Like, is this somebody that the Capitals can count on, or is this literally the Ovechkin show? End of sentence. Like, with the Capitals are kind of that weird team that's like, if they're healthy, they can be a dangerous team, but they're not. So what are they? We don't know.
Yeah. I'm pretty content. I would say this is the most content I've been with the Rangers in quite a long time. Like, even last year's deadline, I felt a little underwhelmed at the time. Those moves ended up working out pretty well. I didn't think the Rangers were going to win more than one round last year. They won two. I was pretty content. Then I got really pissed that they lost the series to Tampa after going up 2-0. I was pretty pissed. Last summer, I was pretty underwhelmed. I wasn't that high on the Trocheck signing. Coming into this year, I thought maybe get back to the second round, probably not get past. Now I think it's reasonable to say, based on how this season has gone, where they haven't played that well, but they still have one of the 6 best records in the entire league. They've got guys like Shesterkin who haven't really peaked yet this season. Panarin has kind of gotten it going here in the last couple of weeks, but still hasn't really reached that zenith. Zibanejad's been really solid all year. I feel like you can get more out of Kreider going forward here. The kid line, really good when they first got back together. Hit a little bit of a dry spell the last couple of games. Not worried about that. For all intents and purposes, this is the most content, happy I've been with the Rangers in a long time. And like we said before, now it's just a matter of racking up the points. You got a good opportunity this week. You've got Detroit, Washington, and LA. Those are 3 winnable games. I'm not saying you have to win all 3, but all 3 are pretty winnable.
Yeah, I would also like to get another defenseman, and Nikola Mikkola has been fine. He's been much better than Ben Harper has been. I'll tell you that. Like, it's I know it's not a very high bar to climb over, but the thing about the playoffs, and we could talk about this all day and all night, is that the Rangers right now are one injury away from the lineup being an issue. Like if somebody on the Rangers blue line goes down, who's replacing them? Ben Harper? Libor Hayek, the kayak, back up for the Rangers? Like, whomst is coming to save the Rangers on the blue line? They don't have anybody. I would like to get somebody, obviously not somebody who's going to be an NHL player every day, just somebody that you can depend on, that can just man the ship, like just hold the ship. Just don't let it sink. Just have it keep floating. That's all the Rangers need out of an injury replacement. Just somebody that you can trust, who can play at the NHL level, that you have seen play at the NHL level, that won't demand NHL minutes, but is competent enough to play and to fill in. Because if somebody on the Rangers blue line goes down come playoff time, and you got to get Libor Hayek or Ben Harper playoff minutes, that's going to be an issue.
All right, Andrew, the answer to your question is very straightforward. It's going to be Adam Fox playing 32 minutes, and whoever that defenseman is that draws in for them playing 6. That is the way Gallant has typically solved these issues. When he doesn't like somebody, they play 6 minutes in the game, and then whoever he feels is playing well that night, it'll be Adam Fox 30 minutes a night most of the time in the playoffs. And he should be fine at that. Granted, you'd probably like it, ideally, in an ideal world, that 6th defenseman is good enough as a penalty killer that you can give Fox the PK off and let him focus at 5-on-5 in the power play. But they need Fox on the penalty kill because Mikkola is better than Ben Harper. They're both better than Hayek. But ideally, you would like that to be a little bit more sound, and on the odd chance that, somebody's going to get hurt. That is just the way the playoffs go. You need at least 7 defensemen, if not 8. Ideally, you would like someone who is right-handed, but you'd live with playing somebody on their offside if it meant you got a competent NHL player there. I don't think they're going D. I just don't, unfortunately. I think they like Harper. That's part of why they gave him that extension. And you and I both see it. Most of the people on the internet see it, but we're not in the C-suite, unfortunately. So good for him and his agent, though. You got financial security.
Yeah. Go get your bag, bro.
Yeah, that's what it's always about. We're always going to be on that regard. We're pro player getting your bag, but once you get your bag and you kind of stink, then maybe we're going to have to start. We're going to have to come up with a name for that. Like
we're very pro go get your bag, but if you're not very good, go get your bag on a different team, please.
Correct.
Like that is what that's our brand. Is like, hey, you get as much money as you possibly can, but if you're not very good, do it somewhere else, please.
Yeah. We're going to have to come up with something to describe that. Like we have the Artemi Panarin scholarship right winger. We have the Brent Howden cardio scholarship for 4th line center. We're going to have to come up with something for that. Like I'm trying to think of like a 2015-ish player that the Rangers let walk. Like because Strawman was still good when they let him go to Tampa. The Dan Girardi scholarship award, like he went to Tampa.
Well, I mean, Dan Girardi wasn't. They let him go too late at that point.
Yes. But he was still cooked. He was still cooked by the time he went to Tampa.
Yeah, well, he was already cooked as a Ranger. Yeah. Like that's the thing is like he was already done, and then he went to Tampa Bay and was done in Tampa Bay. He was just done in a different zip code, but he was done here and he was done there. But yeah, we could make it the Dan Girardi Scholarship Award. I mean, I don't know. We'll think about it. Yeah, we'll figure. We'll get back to you. We'll figure.
We'll go to the writers' room at some point.
That's right. Yeah,
we'll work on that. All right. Anything else you want to get in before we get out of here?
Yeah. If the Rangers lose another game in regulation, I don't want to see pitchforks. Like it's just ridiculous to me.
And that's us saying that.
Right. Like, listen, it's so crazy, man, how spoiled some Rangers fans are. The Rangers lost their first game in a calendar month in regulation. They went 8-0-2. And they lose a game against a good team in the Winnipeg Jets. They played really well. It's not as if the Jets had 50 shots and they got destroyed. No, the Rangers put up 1 million shots. Connor Hellebuyck was phenomenal. and stopped so many high danger opportunities. He stole that game for Winnipeg. These things happen. The Rangers got goalied. The Rangers have been goaling other teams for the past 20 years. They finally got goalied once, and the pitchforks are out? Give me a break, please.
Yeah. If Igor is playing like this for like a month, okay, then we can have a discussion. Maybe we should be a little bit concerned. It's been like 3 games. That's the thing. Everybody likes to make the sweeping conclusion based off of a small sample. Give it 2 weeks. If Igor's still around 900 or 890, okay, then we could say maybe they need to sit him an extra start here, give Halak 2 in a row, let Igor, take a break, get his mind right, whatever. But until then, it's a couple games. Let's see what happens on Wednesday, and we take it from there.
I would much rather have Igor Shesterkin be struggling on February 21st than in May 21st. Like, that's
Correct.
just, it shouldn't be that difficult for anybody to understand or to agree with that. Like, it's not a controversial opinion. Like, hey, would you rather your starting goaltender struggle game 58 or whatever, or in game 6 of the conference finals? Which would you rather? Like, it's a silly question because like everybody should know the answer to it. If Shesterkin is struggling now, as long as he gets it right, sooner rather than later, I don't really care. It's fine. These things happen. If, like you said, if he's struggling post deadline, middle of March, end of March, that's a whole different conversation. But right now, I'm not worried about him.
Yeah. All right, that's our show for the week. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. They got 3 games in the upcoming week, so plenty to talk about next week. Make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're using Apple or Spotify, please be so kind to leave the show a 5-star review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a written review. We got a handful of those. Those are always nice to see. If you're on YouTube, be sure to vote in the polls, leave comments on the videos, that kind of thing. We're Liberty Blue Pod on YouTube, Liberty Blue Podcast on YouTube, at Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram, all kinds of information, content, that kind of stuff on there. The personals, Andrew's is Chelney Andrew, Chelney Andrew. Mine is Nick Zararis, Nick Zararis. Be sure you're following those as well. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.